Welcome to Parables Now. This is part two of the story, Forced Responsibility. I am the cuticle counselor, your buffer to wellness, and the guest host for today's episode. Come back Friday to join the storyteller and me as he reflects on his story. Thank you for listening. This is Parables Now.
Ladies and gentlemen, gather round. Something brand new is going down. He who has ears, let him hear, and God bless the child. Child is parables now. Ladies and gentlemen, gather round. Something brand new is going down. He who has ears, let him hear, and God bless the child. Child is parables now. Are you listening? You listening? Listen up. 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 Our service started like 11:30. And so we said, okay, we'll go over there, check it out, be hearing good things about it, and at least just get fed or whatever, and then we'll go to our church. And I don't want to, let me just, because this is on record, it wasn't like we wasn't getting fed spiritually, but it's just like, it's different when you in a place where you're working all the time, when people are pulling on you all the time. It's just different. Like you need a break. You know, just like you take vacations like from home, like you need a break. You know, people that, you know, those who listen, you got kids, you need a break from the responsibility. So it was just like, it was a respite, it was a break. And we went and we got energized. Like we was digging it. Like, yo, this is dope. And we would come back and do praise and worship fired up. You know, and we wasn't telling nobody what we was doing, but we was fired up. Like we was coming back, we was fired up. And so I had went on a stint of like 5 weeks where I had preached back to backs for 5 weeks, like back to backs, morning service or evening service for 5 weeks straight. And I couldn't get past this one message. It was like one message talking about I can't remember the character in the Bible, but they left their father's home or whatever. And so, you know, we visiting this church and we going back to our church, and I'm doing this, you know, preaching, and I'm preaching this sermon, and, you know, giving this sermon to, you know, the people. And the 5th week after I, you know, did the final, on the 5th week, my wife and I, we went out to Outback. And when we got there, it was a really long line. And so she said, hey, you want to stay or do you want to leave? And when she said that, it's almost like I went in a trance, like something clicked. I was like, leave? Like, it was like I was there in body, but in my head, I was like, I would never leave my dad's church. Like, never. And like, nobody asked me that. Like, I'm literally having this conversation in my head when she said leave. Like, do you want to leave Outback and go somewhere else? But I'm like, I would never leave my dad's church. And then it was like, well, what if you've been preaching for like 5 weeks straight? I was like, about this character leaving their dad's land and going out and really like establishing their own. I was like, yo, whoa. And she was like, she tagged me, was like, hey, did you hear me? I was like, hey, I think it's time to leave my dad's church. And her eyes lit up because she didn't want to bring it up, but she'd been feeling like the same thing. And then, and I told you, you know, she had been under pressure. It was like, yo, like, I'm with you. Like, this sounds good. And so we wound up leaving, and we wound up going to the church that we had been visiting, and it was like a breath of fresh air. For me, it was a breath of fresh air because we started really merging together. There was a lot of weight that was lifted off. It was almost like we was back in the honeymoon phase. It was beautiful. Like, we would go to church. Church is about maybe like an hour. Then after church, we would go home, take a nap. You know, we would do what husband and wife do. Like, it was like beautiful. We was having fun. Like, it was like we was revived. And so we are church workers. And so we intended on getting our hands dirty in a sense, but we said we would take our time. Like, we're gonna take our time. We love the space that we in. We can see where there was wedges between us when it came to like church and the pull on church and the responsibility. We could see clearly how that had a wedge in our marriage. And so we went ahead and we're going to church, and we started doing little things, here and there, like to help out or whatever. And her friend, a friend that she knew, was head of the finance team, and she needed some help on the finance team. My wife and I at the time, we had banking background, like we knew about money or whatever, and so she asked my wife, like, hey, would you help out? So we talked about it, and I was like, they need help. This is what you do. Absolutely, let's go ahead and do it. And so, she would help out, with the money or whatever. Sometimes I would go back and help out, because it was like, they needed help. And eventually I got to the point where I was like, this is kind of like a conflict of interest for me and my wife both to be counting money together. I just didn't feel comfortable. So once the finance team really got more established, I kind of like bowed out. Was like, but I'm like, anything my wife involved in, I'm involved in too. I want to know what's going on. Hey, anything she involved in, I'm involved in. And so she was, working finance, just helping money for a little bit, and then the friend wound up leaving. So then they needed somebody to hit up finance, like a CFO. So she was talking to me about it. I was like, whew. And this church is much bigger than my dad's church. It's not a mega church, but it's much more bigger than my dad's church. More responsibility, like, and I've been through all the channels in my dad's church. I've been through everything, right? And so I'm like, hey, it's a big responsibility. Like, let's talk about this. Are we sure like this is gonna be put more of a demand if you're the CFO? Now we're not talking about just Sunday morning helping out. If they have other services, you're gonna be in charge. Like, it was just like, just talking like, hey, this is huge. Are we sure we're ready for this? And so eventually we agreed, okay, boom, go ahead and do this, be the CFO. From there, it went to, hey, they want me to be a trustee. Like, a trustee? Like, you know what a trustee is? When we talk about trustee, you mean like a trustee of the church? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, whoa, that's a whole nother beast. Like, we talking about bylaws you gotta abide by. Like, you talking about you signing your name on stuff. Like, you really being held accountable for like real church affairs. Nah, we ain't even been here that long. Like, I don't know these people like that. Like, I'm not even a trustee I wasn't even a trustee at my dad's church. Like, that's major. Like, you're in charge of pretty much the rise and fall of the church, those big decisions. Nah, I'm sorry. I got to say no on this one. And I'm thinking, I'm a husband protecting my house or whatever. I'm putting my foot down. I'm like, nah, because I know I got to protect mine. I'm like, nah. And so I remember we were sitting in church, and the pastor announced the new trustees, and he calls my wife's name. And I just look at her, and she stood up, and I'm like, instantly I just felt betrayed. Like, that's the best word I can say. I felt betrayed. Because up to this point, we've been working hard at merging. Any big decisions that we've made them together. Even if we didn't agree on it, it's like, we kind of came to agreement. And so I just felt betrayed, and it was like this wedge instantly put up. So became the trustee of the church, but then it just started kind of snowballing to where she just started doing more and more. It went from us sitting together in church to now her running around the church doing church service. Like, pastor, calling her, she's sneaking in the front, but we have to do the fingers, in church. And it was just like more and more time spent at the church, more in demand. And it's just like, so it's like, yo, like, this is what we tried to get away from. Like what's going on? Like, this is what we tried to get away from. And so it got so bad, the church wound up moving to a new location. I can remember, we was on our way to new location, and the tire blew out. And it was like a walkthrough. Like they was letting like the members come in a walkthrough, and I remember the tire blew out, and I can remember, we were sitting on the side of the road, and she just started crying and was like, "You did this," and I was like, "I did what? I made the tire blow out? Like you did this. If it wasn't for you, I would be at the church, looking at the new church going through the walkthrough." And I'm like, "Yo, you that upset that we missing this walkthrough?" And so it was like, for me, it was like I could see like this was deep. Like this is deep. Like, I don't know what this is, but like, yo, this is deep. And so things started snowballing it so bad. I had to I called a meeting with the pastor, the wife, and my wife. And I was like, yo, I said, I feel like a jealous lover. I feel like my wife cheating on me with the church. Like that's how I feel. Like she was doing so much. I was like, this is crazy. And so they heard me, but nothing changed. And it just progressively got more and more and more. And I was like, some need to give. Like some need to give. Like this is too much. And so now this carried on for like 7 years. Like 7 years. And so now we've been married 9 years. And it's like just more and more and more church trips. Like her we went from like our vacation time revolved around the church. When we would take vacation for our anniversary and stuff revolved around the church. It's like it was just too much. And I got to the point like, yo, I can't do this no more. Like I cannot do this no more. And I was made to feel by everybody else like I was against the church. Which I'm really just against that false doctrine. Like, this is faulty doctrine. Like, your first ministry is your home. So when I began to be more vocal, because now I had a meeting with the pastor, his wife, and ain't nothing changed. So now I'm being more vocal, and now I'm standing out like I'm an enemy of the church. And it's like, nah, like I just want my family back. And so I became more of an outcast. I won't necessarily say I was ostracized, but it was almost like you need to buy into the system. Like I was literally told to get busy in the church. I was literally told that, like, so don't just watch her get busy. No, that's not how this works. And so now in my household, I'm trying to make decisions, but it's almost like the pastor has more say so in my household. And so feel betrayed, feel emasculated, feel like can't be a man in my own household. And so I decided year 9, I'm done. I can't do this. I decided I was done. I didn't try the meeting. I didn't try to meet you halfway. I tried to come on church trips. Like, it's so much bitterness in my house. Like you mentioned the church. I'm like blowing up. I'm not careful with my words now. Like I'm just bitter. And I'm bleeding all over the place. I'm bitter. So year 9, I decided to leave. So I'm done. I can't do this. So I left. Stayed with a friend for a little bit, probably like 2 months. At this time, so I'm working at the post office, and I was, for the majority of the time that we were married, I was waiting for a full-time position. And I finally got a full-time position and went to my new route. When you get a full-time position, you get your own route. And so when I got to my new station, the person that had the route before me, I was told, like, hey, she's the girl that had the route before you. Have any questions, talk to her. And so I was asking her all kind of questions, like, hey, what about this? Hey, what about that? Just running everything by. She would come over, show me stuff or whatever. And it was funny because I didn't know that then, but it was a reputation like she really don't be helping people. But she was helping me out. Like, cool. And so she gave me a number, like, hey, if you need anything, call me. Let me know. So I'm calling on the street, like, hey, I can't find this, I can't find that. And it's very common at the post office, like, you have people come from other stations, like, hey, here go my number, if you need anything, call me. So people in the post office, we all got each other's number. And so she was like almost like my first friend there, because like that's my point of contact on a lot of stuff. My point of contact about, hey, about the station. My point of contact, like, hey, what about this manager? Became a very point of contact or whatever. And this was, like I had, I think year 7. So I came in the post office. I think year 7, I got that route. So now we talking about being at that station for 2 years, and then, I left my wife or whatever. And so now I'm gone. I'm out the house. Staying with a friend for a little bit. But remember, let's go full circle. And we talking about these urges, right? Like that I had felt like I fought with and won, because now I'm married, right? I still had a self pleasure problem, because like when you've been doing that for so long, we talking about 24 years, that just didn't go away overnight, right? So that's something we had to talk about. The porn thing is something we had to talk about. We had to attack that together. She found me hiding porn, so I got exposed, so we had to attack that together. So those things I had to attack while in my marriage. But now I didn't left. I am married, but I feel betrayed. Like for those 9 years, like, so 7 years, at the church, but a year before that, like, it was like we wasn't merging. Like we had stopped doing all the work. So it wasn't like all of a sudden I lost, hope for my marriage. It was like over time, it's just like decaying. And so now that I'm gone, once I made the decision to leave, because I've been working this hard for this, so now that I made the decision to leave, it's like, this ain't no fly by the night decision. It's like, nah, I didn't thought about this. Like, the love I felt for this has been decaying. And so now I'm gone, and the urges. I'm like, in my mind, I didn't see myself as married anymore. Like, it had been decaying, so now I'm up to this point, I don't see no covenant. Like, I feel like I told the pastor and wife, like, I'm being cheated on. So I don't feel no covenant. But I'm still a church boy, right? So I mean, I still got the word of God in me or whatever, but I got these urges. And so my point of contact, we started doing stuff after work. We would go to Target, Home Depot, and just like walk around, just talk. Right innocent. I want to be crystal clear. The whole time I was married, she never made a pass at me, ever. Never. It was always some friend type stuff. Never. Afterwards, we hanging out more. She know I'm not home. We chilling. And then one of these dates, she asked me, she was like, hey, I don't live too far from here. Do you just want to go back to my place? Now, in my mind, it really wasn't like, I'm saying dating now, but it wasn't like romance. It was like Home Depot. It was like friendship type stuff, right? Now, I admit I'm dealing with urges, and now I'm looking at her totally different now. Like, this is a woman. In my mind, I ain't married. Like, I done had these urges or whatever. I done kept to my promise. And it's like, now I'm like, oh, wow. So she invited me back. Like, but the gentleman in me was like, oh, hell no. Like, don't you know you're a queen? And so by this time we were sitting in the car, when she asked me, we were sitting in her car. We were sitting in my car. I got out the car. Didn't say a word to her. When she said that, I didn't say a word. I got out my car, went over to our side door, opened it up. I took her hand, and she was like, what are you doing? We walked her to her car, opened up her doors, unlock your door, open up her door. I was like, you go home and have a good night. Totally took her like, what? She done made the pass, she done put it out there, and I'm like, nah, like, no. Like, if it's gonna be anything, and I wasn't thinking at the time, it was like literally my gentleman skills just like took over. I wasn't thinking at the time, but it's like, but if it's gonna be anything, I ain't no hit it, nah, we ain't rocking like that. So the next day, she went and talked to me because we worked together. Went and talked to me. Come to find out, she had told her friends, like, she was like, I made a pass at the pastor. I feel so ashamed. Like, I feel so bad. I feel ashamed or whatever. And so it was like, yo, like, what was up with that? You know, and not immediately. Like, it probably was like weeks after this because, like, we was avoiding each other. She was avoiding me. I'm avoiding her. And then eventually it was like, yo, like, what was up with that? And, you know, we begin to talk. She began to talk more about our lives. We began to start opening up more. And it's like, okay, wow. Like, okay, I see that, all this stuff, right? And so slowly but surely, we started getting to know each other. Slowly but surely, I did wind up going back to our place. You know, I think we may have went on one date, like at a restaurant or something like that. Wind up going back to our place. Wasn't thinking about nothing. Didn't think nothing was gonna happen. And one thing led to another. And like she hosted people in her bedroom. And I don't know if that was innocent or not. I mean, but she had cheers, like everything she did was in her bedroom. She had cheers all around, like, I don't know. But one thing led to another, and we started, you know, getting more physical, more hands-on. And I remember we was about to be intimate. And I remember I penetrated. And it was that feeling when I had the first kiss, like my innocence was gone. That feeling when I had felt the wetness in a woman for the first time in that basement. That feeling like me touching breasts for the first time. It was like the penetration for somebody that was not my wife. I felt like the covenant broke. I felt it. Wasn't even one good pump. I poured out real quick because I felt it. It just like hit me like a weight. And I tried to run out the room and she like grabbed me. And she just like held on to me. I just started crying because like I knew things would never be the same ever. You know, that night, you know, we fell asleep. Again, you know, we talked more at work. Like we're getting more closer now. And like now it's like, I'm almost saying like a soul tie, right? Before you know it, I'm moving in. Before you know it, I am like starting a life with this woman. In my mind, like the covenant's broken. I ain't thinking about going back. I ain't thinking about, marriage or whatever. It's like, boom, let's do this. Like, I'm just no shame. Like, I'm out here just like, I don't got no papers. Like, what's up? Literally feeling good. And then I'm trying to live this new life, and then that church guilt, keep creeping like, hey, yo, this ain't right. This is good. I'm good. I'm cool. It's all good. But still, that thought in the back of my mind, and I'm gonna be very honest. I think it was more guilty conscience than Holy Spirit. I'm gonna be very honest. Guilty conscience more than Holy Spirit. More, I know better. I've been raised better. And so, got in contact with my ex, and we had kept in contact, off and on. And I just felt like, maybe we should reconcile. Maybe this is not right. So we talked about reconciliation. When we went out, we had a conversation, and we was talking about reconciliation, and she laughed. She was like, well, I want to let you know I've been seeing somebody. I'm like, all right, cool. I've been seeing somebody too. I'm like, I'm gonna, take it a step further. Like, I'm living with somebody. Because if we talking about reconciling, clean slate. I just want to let you know, boom, this is what's going on. And so, I don't know if it was that meeting or another one, but she told me she had been intimate with somebody. All right, cool. We're gonna reconcile, right? So I remember, went back home, and we fell right back into the same pattern. Like, the church stuff. Just all over again. Like, I thought there would be a change. There was no change. And I'm like, hell no, I'm not doing this. I left again. Nah, I'm not doing this. Went back, and I'm like, I'm done. This time, I'm done. So, went back to the lady I left. And before I said that, because I want to say this too, before I went back the first time, the day I was supposed to go back, I actually canceled. And I told my wife at the time, I was like, I can't leave her. I can't leave her. Like, it was a soul tie. Like, I can't leave her. Then I wound up, did leave. And then I, left my house again, went back with the lady. And at this time, I'm done. Like, it's a wrap. It's done. We talking about having kids, all this good stuff. Like, we talking about moving forward, like, boom. And I remember, like, it's still that thought in my mind, like, yo, this is not right. Like, this ain't right, though. But this ain't right. And I'm like, why can't I just want to move forward? I want to move free. Like, God, what's going on? Me and the, I don't know if you want to call it a girlfriend, so people won't confuse the story. You got a wife, you got the girlfriend. My girlfriend, we going to church. Yo, you broke it. Yo, it's crazy. Yo, I'm going to church. Like, getting good word. We talking about it. She wasn't really much of the religious type, but she like, oh, this is better than what I thought. Like, the church we going to, like, they made it make sense. It wasn't it wasn't like the churches I grew up with all the performance, especially the vocal performance by the preachers and stuff like that. Like, no, this church we going to, they made it make sense. It was like educational. It was like they were using terms like hedonic adaptation, and she was like, oh shucks, like, oh, this is like, like we talk about Stockholm syndrome. Churches I was going to want to talk about Stockholm syndromes and stuff like that. Like, it was like, it's the devil, get the devil up out of here, But people really have trauma, And so she was digging it. She was liking it. Like, we was merging. I felt safe. I felt heard. I felt loved. I ain't know nothing about love languages at that time, but she was hitting all the love languages. And I didn't know what that felt. I just know this feels good. Feels right. We got into deep conversation. I started telling her some of the stories I told you guys about when I was younger, my first kiss, my first touch. She was asking me age ranges. Like, what are the age ranges? How old were some of these women? She was like, Quentin, you were molested. What? I'm like, no, she was like, no. Those age gaps, no, you were too young for that. They should have known me. They were the adult. I'm like, oh, wow. That never registered. I was like, oh, wow. And that's when, for me, light bulbs started to go off about identity, urges, why I did certain things, why I was attracted to certain people. All these things started to make sense. And it was like, I was hearing the spirit on a whole nother frequency. And the spirit was like, yeah, I'm about to start dealing with you. I was like, whoa. And so I started to lean into more of now the spirit, not what I've been taught, not the God, my father and my mom, they taught me. I started to lean more into it. I was like, okay, what is it that you want from me? And he started to take me to scripture text. He started really just starting the healing process on some of the broken areas in my life. And I'm like, and this is all like where I'm with my girlfriend. And so one day, me and the spirit, we had been talking, like, he had me like wide open, like, okay, like I'm listening, I'm here, I'm good. And so I was sitting there, my girlfriend, she was asleep, and I was sitting in a chair, and I had that feeling again, like maybe I should go back home, like this is not right. And I was like, I don't want to go back home. I don't want to go back to that marriage. I don't want that. And it was like her ceiling opened up, and it was almost like God, like there was this light from heaven, and The voice is like, what do you want? And I started for the first time in my life saying what I wanted. And I was being honest. I wasn't trying to be churchy. I was talking about what I wanted sexually, what I wanted physically, what I wanted financially. I was purging. It was like I was purging out of my soul. And it was like I felt God take a deep breath. It's like, finally, you're being honest with me. And he reminded me of the scripture in John 4 with the woman at the well when she started talking about Jesus was like, go give me your husbands. She's like, I don't have no husband. He was like, nah, the person you're sleeping with ain't your husband now, and the other ones ain't your husband. And she started talking about worship, like, where do we go to worship? And Jesus was like, listen, my Father's looking for those who worship me in spirit and in truth, in the spirit of honesty. And it was like almost for the first time I felt in my life I had true worship of God because I started being honest. From that day forward, I just started being honest with God, and I felt a connection with God like I had never ever felt before, ever. And like things in my life started to change. And so me and my girlfriend, we went to church, and we were sitting in church, and the pastor said, when you know who you are, you know what to do. And that joint hit me like a ton of bricks. And now I don't feel guilt or shame about going back. Now it's like accountability. It was like, when you know who you are, you know what to do. And it's like, you're already somebody's husband. You're already somebody's father. When you know who you are, you know what to do. If you want to move on with your life, you need to go back and settle what's already there. At the time when he said it, my girlfriend, she had whipped out her phone and started texting. I didn't know. I mean, she was texting. I didn't know she was texting. I didn't know what she was doing. But I seen she had, whipped out her phone. So after church, we got in the car, and I just started crying. And I was like, hey, and I tried to talk, and she kind of just waved me off. And she showed me what she was doing. And she had sent a text message. When the pastor said that, she showed me the text. She had texted her girlfriend and was like, he's leaving me today for good. Like, she knew it. And I was just like, she was like, go do what you got to do. She's like, I get it. She's like, go do what you got to do. She's like, if this is supposed to be, it'll be. She was like, but I need you to be whole. I need you to be well. Call my wife. I'm like, hey, how do you feel about reconciling? Little did I know, she was praying about the reconciliation. She was bombarding heaven, like, not coming after me, but going after God. But like, God, I want my marriage. So boom, we got back together. But this time I had conditions. It's like, hey, if we're gonna do this, we need to see a therapist. And if we're gonna do this, I need like 2 days. 2 days, every other Sunday, or at least like one Sunday. I need something. I can't I can't do this. This I can't do. Went back home, stayed for another 5 years. For 3 of those 5 years, it was like she had an adamant stand. I ain't changing nothing. She went even harder. Now she's traveling out of state to do church stuff. She went full-time church. She quit her job and went full-time church. And now I'm the only one working. Like 2 years before I actually left the house, now 1 year before we left the house, we ain't even doing holidays together. Like, she's out of town with the pastor the day before Thanksgivings and stuff. Christmas, she just leaves the house, don't tell me where she's going, she's gone. Like, and so the last year that I was in the house, I started sleeping on the sofa. It was like we were literally separated in the house. And that decay, like, I'm definitely done. Like, I felt no covenant, no merger, no nothing. And so after 14 years, we finally we divorced. And this is crazy because I was about to say it's the best thing for both of us. Marriage. If you listen, if you do the work in marriage, marriage can work. But you both got to do the work, right? And so I could have stayed married. I always tell people I could have stayed married, but I told God I don't want to stay married. I found release in the scriptures when it said, "Can the two walk together unless the two agree?" Question mark. No. A house divided against itself can't stand. You're absolutely right. And it was like, you know what? We're not merging. There is no agreement, God honest agreement. The only thing we could agree on is that we shouldn't be married. So we divorced. So now, you know, I'm what, 2 years now, I think, removed from divorce. And I am better in tune with who I am, better in tune to what my purpose and my passion is. I still have the urge, so I'm gonna do my. So we got the W's, right? So one of the reasons why I told this story is because the inward struggle, it has been hard. I'm pretty sure those listening, like, you have an inward struggle that's hard. There are things that you can't account for. However, there are things you have to take accountability for. And I can't change what happened to me in the past, but I got to stand up and take an account for the things that I've done. The scripture says a man is drawn away by his own lust. You heard me say that scripture before. How did that lust come? That varies, how the lust actually came. But once that lust is into the system, we're drawn away by our own lust. And so there are still urges that I still struggle with. But just like I was committed back then to be sold out, I'm committed now to be sold out. I'm not perfect, but I want to get married again. And I want to present to her like how I went hard. I want to say, listen, because my desire is still just to be with one woman. That is my desire, is just to be sold out for one woman, you know. And so what have I learned? You know, I really learned who God is. He's love. That's what I've learned. Who God is. God is love. And where I am now, I'm still being intentional about my struggles, more intentional about acceptance, confession, and more intentional about surrender. And so that's my story.
What a wonderful, wow. That is quite a story. Thank you for sharing. I want to say that it was very, very, very vulnerable, I think. Can I say that? Would you agree?
Absolutely.
I would say transparent. I think it's gonna bless a lot of people. I think a lot of people will be able to relate. So thank you for paving the way, even being a pioneer and sharing your journey, a lot of your experiences, some that you were a part of voluntarily, some you were kind of maybe forced or manipulated into. But, you know, thank you for being honest about the choices. So,
Thank you.
what else? Is there anything else? Any other things that you wish you had said or come to mind?
No, just thank you for what you said. I appreciate that. So no, I think I'm settled. I think that's all.